Good afternoon. Wow, that's loud. Board of County Commissioners Workshop will convene. It's after 1:30, so I'll turn it over to Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this afternoon we would like to review with you the major capital improvement projects for fiscal year 2021. Some of the things you'll see in here is that these projects are part of the pre-existing 5-year CIP, and there are some new ones in here. We'll review all of those with you. I'm going to ask Pete to make some introductory remarks, and then he's going to introduce some of the department directors to present their sections of the capital improvement budget for this coming year. So, Mr. Chair, with your permission.
Sure.
Pete?
Thank you, Roger. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So today we're going to cover with you the first draft of the proposed capital improvement plan and major maintenance plan for fiscal year 21-22, and as Roger said, also the following 4 years. So it's a 5-year plan. We focus primarily on fiscal year 21-22, but not to the exclusion of the other years. So what you have in front of you, you also have the schedules in front of you. There's a capital improvement plan schedule with all the capital improvement projects. There's a major maintenance plan with all the major maintenance. And there's also a sheet there that is just major maintenance that is funded out of the general fund. Those schedules have the project. They also have the phasing of the projects, when we expect revenues to come in and costs to be incurred, and also the funding source for all of the projects. As we go through today, a few things. One is we will not be covering every single project. As Roger stated, we're going to cover significant projects, major projects, but not everything. So if there's something on there that you all want to talk about, please bring that up to the department directors. There's department directors who will be presenting, and then all of those who have CIP projects and major maintenance projects are here in the audience to answer questions. We are not going to go to any extent through the transportation CIP because you just addressed that on May 18th. We took the consensus from that meeting and we have incorporated those changes into the current CIP. Then we're going to talk a little bit briefly here about, how we came about with this CIP, and as we discuss the major projects, we'll also discuss, department directors will discuss any longer range issues if they have those. So questions we will be asking you at the end of this presentation: are you good with proceeding to the second draft, and is there anything else you would like to consider? Commissioners, this CIP and major maintenance plan is really an outgrowth of a lot of input that we've received from you all over the past year, and even previously to the past year, but certainly over the past year with a number of workshops that we have held and asked you questions and asked for your input on a lot of your priorities. And these priorities aren't all inclusive, but they're water quality, flood mitigation, access to conservation preserves, recreational opportunities, and of course planning for growth with such things like solid waste and utilities. So going back to even October, we had a workshop with the board on the Basin Management Action Plan, water quality. In November, there was a workshop on the flood mitigation study, and then the Colonial Alternative Study and ALECO extension recommendation. You can see what happened today with our input from that and starting the design for that project. In December, you were presented with long-term solid waste discussion, and we sought your input. In February, there was a discussion about transportation priorities. You had your strategic planning session. And then again, 2 weeks ago, we discussed the transportation priorities and expediting road projects. So this CIP and major maintenance is all as a result of those workshops over the past year and your input to us at those workshops. Just really in kind of a 40,000-foot view, a broad view, your capital improvement plan is for fiscal year 21-22. You can see $222 million over the 5 years it's $694 million. A good part of that in transportation and utilities and solid waste as we try to manage growth. And then also you can see a significant amount over the 5 years in natural resources and parks and recreation. And then major maintenance, this shows general fund major maintenance, and then all funds. Major maintenance is paid out of the fund in which the department resides, and those costs are incurred. So the general fund has this coming year $21.3 million of major maintenance. Major maintenance, unlike the CIP, which is new projects, major maintenance is spending that we do in order to maintain or extend the life of an existing asset or facility. So you can see this coming year with $21.3 million. This is a bit of a spike. It's not because of deferred maintenance. It's just because we have some big facilities that are fairly old at this point. We have a lot of roofing, HVAC, and replumbing to do in some of those facilities. This was anticipated. We've been anticipating this spike for a few years, and then you can see it starts to level off. So with that, we'll start with our first department and presenter, Jesse Lavender, Director of Parks and Recreation, to go through Parks and Recreation CIP.
Commissioners, and as Mr. Lavender's come to the podium, just want to repeat something that Pete said a little bit earlier. All of these, the capital projects that you see here are really a result of either your strategic planning sessions or workshops that we've had throughout the year where you've told us these are the projects that are important to you, and so you get a pretty good look at them today. In the area of major maintenance, as Pete's described, and again, I think it worthy of repetition, these are all of the maintenance for all of these projects that we've built over the years. We would not bring to you deferred maintenance unless there's some, we're telling you way in advance that we're short of funds and unable to keep up with maintenance. So what you see here is an opportunity for us to continue to keep up with maintenance on all of these projects where we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars over time. And so it's just simply time for roof replacements, time for HVAC replacement, and other kinds of projects. So with that, Jesse?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We are going to go over 9 of the 12 Parks and Recreation projects here in a few minutes. You can kind of see on the map where all the locations of these projects are occurring at. And feel free and stop me if you have questions at any point during this presentation. So here's the list and a breakdown for the next 5 years for Parks and Recreation projects. So this roughly represents $60 million, almost $60 million in Parks and Recreation improvements to Lee County over the next 5 years. If you recall from this morning's meeting, you graciously approved the design contract for the Able Canal pathway. I want to highlight these next 3 projects on the Parks and Recreation presentation. The Able Canal pathway has been in the works for many, many years. For those of you that aren't aware, this is a 12-foot wide, 6-mile long linear pathway along the north side of Able Canal and Lehigh Acres. And the reason I want to highlight these is the next project we're going to go over is going to talk about Lehigh Acres Park. And the last project we're going to go over is a trail enhancement up here at West Marsh. But I'll get into the details of those here in just a minute. The Able Canal pathway is about a $7 million project with about $5 million coming from the state through the MPO and their allocation of funding. We're estimated to complete this project in fiscal year 24-25. Now on to the Lehigh Acres Park expansion. This is a almost $12 million project that has some very interesting features to it. As you'll see from this amenity list, we are looking to add an incredible amount of recreational amenities to Lehigh Acres. This has been in the works for several years, and I'm really pleased to bring it to fruition. And we are looking at about $4 million coming out of community park impact fees and 6.2 coming out of regional park impact fees for this project. Now I'm going to pull up the design slide here, kind of show you exactly what we're doing here. So you'll see we've got 3 football fields, which are mainly, this has been a shared use facility, so this is a great enhancement, locker rooms, all the amenities that several of our other community parks already have, additional parking right here in this area, I'm sorry, will be pickleball courts, we're adding a disc golf course, and I didn't want to leave Mr. Cody out, Lee-Tran, this isn't working, this portion right here, all the way up to Village Lakes Road, is going to be a park and ride facility that you'll be hearing more about sometime in August, hopefully. It will have 4 bus bays, parking, shelter, and restrooms, but you'll hear more about that in August. Now, this is an overall trail system expansion initiative for Parks and Recreation. I did want to highlight this with the other 2 projects as West Marsh Preserve, which has recently been dug out, and if you're familiar with West Marsh, Lamson's trying to store some more water on the preserve there, and in doing so, they also took the fill and used it for the 82 widening project. So what you see here is not only West Marsh, but it is all our trails, and it's over the next 5 years. We're looking at 350 every other year for design of restrooms, parking areas, elevated trails to where you can hike them year-round, and the 1.4 every other year after that would be constructing those amenities. These are the first year preserves that we're looking to enhance, and this would all be coming out of regional park impact fees. Now we have Larry Kiker Preserve, and this is just the recreational amenities. We'll be designing this around recreation, education, mitigation, and restoration. And we're trying to encompass this national park theme. So for those of you that have, seen the Ken Burns PBS documentary on the national parks throughout the country, there's a quote saying, this was America's best idea. Well, this is Lee County's best idea right here. So there's roughly 12 miles of trails with camping, observation decks, fishing platforms, basically going to showcase everything we do right here in Lee County. We're asking the board to set aside a certain allotment of money to the tune of $6 million for the next 5 years in order to complete this project. And it will be coming, as the board spoke this morning, to doing what we can with the monies we have. This will be coming from a number of different funding sources: general fund, regional park impact fees, tourist development taxes, and the like. Another initiative that Parks and Rec is going to undergo in the next 5 years, or until basically we have enough shade, is, and this is just showing you next year's $360,000, but we are looking at adding shade to 4 playgrounds and 2 splash pads next year, but we're going to be continuing this process for our ball field areas where the spectators are watching games, and other parks where shade is really a necessity. This is Ruttenberg Park. Those of you that aren't familiar, there was an old library services building located right here in this area, and it is really only used for storage and needs some significant upgrades. So we're proposing to demolish the building, construct 8 pickleball courts, add some restrooms, some shade, and some walking paths to the tune of a little over $2 million. And we're estimated to complete this in 24-25, coming from community park impact fees. All right. Chandler Hall Skate Park. For those of you that aren't familiar with Chandler Hall, we have a field highlighted in yellow there. It's kind of an odd shape, if you'll notice. It is lit. It already has lighting on it. It's really become something we can't put a full soccer team on. We can't have a baseball game. So there's been a recent need for a skate park in the area, closer to the downtown area, kind of centrally located in the county. So we're proposing to put a skate park here for about $275,000 to be completed next year from community park impact fees.
Excuse me, wait, I just don't know what a skate park is.
What's a skate park, Jesse? Is it something I'm gonna take
This-
advantage of?
Well,
Yeah.
this would be for bikes, skateboard apparatus, so they can.
Not the roller skates that I'm familiar with.
Well, it's not a roller skating rink. No, it's not. This would have some ups and downs. Yes.
Would it, Jesse, look like something like the city had over here by the skating at one time? The skate park over here?
We haven't designed it. It could look like that.
It's outdoors.
It would be outdoors. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, make certain I get an invitation to the,
Commissioner, this
Ribbon cutting.
outdoor skate parks are paved areas that are paved either in blacktop or concrete, and they just have an undulating surface, and it's a place for kids to have a good
do
time.
their skateboard
Yes, sir.
things.
Unlikely you and I are going to try it out.
Well, let's get a skateboard. There's a place
No.
on Second Street, they
No,
sell.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to go over some improvements to 6 Mile Slew next. This involves, for those of you that aren't familiar, when we have a lot of people at the slough, they tend to park out on 6 Mile Parkway. So this project would connect the trail system with the roadway there, with the sidewalk, make it safer for patrons to get to the boardwalk. In addition to doing that, it's going to create 10 new parking spaces and upgrade the trailhead restrooms so that they're ADA accessible. And again, this is $371,000. Estimated completion date is fiscal year next year, coming from regional park impact fees. All right, and my final slide. This is Telegraph Creek property, a parcel we acquired, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. We've done some initial enhancements just to get people out there, but this would really solidify that, create a parking area, a pathway, and separate a fishing observation platform from the kayak launch itself. And again, this would be $337,000 to be completed in fiscal year 22-23, coming from regional park impact fees.
So Commissioners, this completes Jesse's presentation, and if you want to wait till we finish that, that's fine, but it may be a good time now to have a very quick discussion about your thoughts on the presentation.
I have a question, Jesse. A lot of the projects I know coming up in 21, 22, 23, but Ruttenberg Park, you had that down for 24, 25 completion. And is there any way we could get that sped up a little bit? Is it a funding issue for that, Ruttenberg Park, tearing down the old library building and construction of the new park?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was Ruttenberg, you said?
Ruttenberg, yeah. You have, on the screen, you have for 24, 25, so that's 4 years out. If the commissioners remind you, is issues last year with that building being vacant, and we had some vandalism out there. And so if you go to that park, you'll see the baseball fields are in good condition, then you have this abandoned building there. I know it's used for storage, but is there any way we expedite that project more than 4 years?
I think that's why we're here having this
Yeah,
discussion.
is it a funding issue, or is it the permitting, construction, design issue?
We would have to push another project, delay another project and move this one up.
Okay, so it's more of a funding issue then, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question or two.
Sure.
I don't want to encourage you to do exactly what you're doing and anything else you want on that Telegraph Creek place where they, it's a small parcel, but I've told you this before personally, that you've done a superb job at getting that off the ground quick, and people, 7 days a week, there's traffic parked there, and people unloading their canoes and their, what do you call the other things? Kayaks. It's very popular, but you're going to take the additional space there so we can park more vehicles, because they're parking along the roadside still, because it's such a popular place, and it's a relatively short drive for people to come out there and be able to launch their little boats and go up Telegraph Creek, go up the Clusatchee, paddle down to the regional park. We get a lot of bang for the buck on that small place, so thank you for keeping that going. You get a lot of points for that. The one thing that caught my attention here in your presentation, and guys, there's nothing in there that you're not doing that I mean, I say attaboy, they're all really important. You've put a huge focus on the Kiker Park, and that's one of the largest pieces that we're going to ever have, and you're making that really an example of the best that Lee County can provide. So I certainly wouldn't want to slow you down in that regard. But the conspicuous one, you hear me coming on this, is the GS10 property in Lehigh. And last time we talked about it, I pointed out that the management plan that's in a partnership with the Lamsod Group in Lehigh shows no really significant utilization of that property for as much as a decade. That's the area that used to be a mining operation, not unlike Lakes Park that we were bragging about this morning. And I previously pointed out that a decade with the potential there of serving 100,000 people with what could be come to known as Lakes Park East, because of the natural water habitat that's there. It's been dug man-made, but it's got such potential to serve that large growing community out there. It's just going to, everything is fine on here, but I can't believe that we can't squeeze some small little portion there of that for somebody to launch kayaks there. Do I have to wait a decade as y'all are thinking through this and looking for a little extra money here and a little extra here? We can't squeeze something out in shorter than a decade?
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Commissioner, I'm not so sure that's an answer that Jesse can really give you at the moment, but I'm making a list of those things that you're talking about today that you are asking us to move up in the schedule, and then we can have that.
I expected he would just hold up his hand and say, by God, we'll do that, Commissioner.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah.
Go ahead, no, raise your hand and tell him, okay, yes, sir, whatever you want, tell him.
Yes, sir.
Just don't forget that
Understand.
one. And we can do better than a decade on that. And you've done so much, how could I ask for more? I'm doing it. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Mr. Director. No, it's manager, and yeah. You're married to that
You're welcome,
good-looking
sir.
girl that was in
I
there
did.
this morning. Yes, good.
Can I add a
Married
little-
up.
Can I ask a little support there, Commissioner Mann's comments, and I totally agree with you, and I support you on that issue. But this is when we kind of go back to the budget, we talk about the reserves, how much we have all the excess reserves. And little projects like the GS10 project, the Ruttenberg Park, or something in the Cape, or something on Stamble, a little bit of money that comes, we have the excess of reserves, do a lot in the community that people enjoy every day. It does create jobs, it creates infrastructure for our community. So if we have the extra money, I would support that in the future. I know Jesse can't say that from the podium there, but for that future budget talks in a few weeks,
Yes, sir.
Amen, yes.
because we have all that money sitting there, and why not put that money back in the community and let people in the community enjoy it? If we use that, we're creating jobs, we're creating a better community. It's great having the reserves, but you know, how much do we really need to have there?
Thank you for those comments, both of you. Thank you.
If I support you 100% there, Commissioner, on those.
Should I repeat it now since Bill's back in the room now? That's the best part.
Real quick, Jesse, I really appreciated your presentation, really well done, thank you very much. And Roger, congratulations to you guys on putting this together. I like this format a lot, thank you very much. One question, the dad and me came out on the playground and splash pad shade enhancements. Thank you so much for those. Do you happen to know how many do we have without shade? Because I'd love to know how many we don't have shade on. I know we're going to get 4 done and 2 splash pads, so where will that leave us after 5 years?
Well, it says the budget allows for, you know, this is what we have programmed for next year. Almost all of our playgrounds right now have at least 30 to 40% coverage, and as we redo them, like we did with the North Fort Myers playground at North Fort Myers Community Park, it would be full 100% shade. So that's what we're going towards in the future.
Could you get me like that inventory so that I can get my mind around it? Because I'll tell you, one thing I'd love to be able to say, and you guys have all witnessed it, you're all parents, you know, I mean, your little kid, you know, getting on the slide and burning himself, or the slide being too hot for them to go down, you know, I mean, shade here is a big deal. I'd love it if we could say, you know, look, 5 years from now or 7 years from now, we'll have every playground 100% covered. That'd be a neat goal to be able to set, so that our kids here in the Florida sun could go and play on those playgrounds that we built for them. So
I'll absolutely get you that information.
that'd be great.
Keep them out of the sun with the skin cancer is obviously a big issue in Florida.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Just one final comment. Jesse's been kind enough to spare some time with me, and I have a son who lives in Colorado, and when I see something elsewhere, and I bring it back and I go, boy, if we could do this or we could do that. But when you start talking about projects like Kiker Preserve, when you talk about different areas, especially up in Lehigh, where you can have these outdoor activities, boy, nothing binds a community like that.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about the parents, their kids and neighbors and that kind of stuff. And it's amazing. So I think it's an extremely important part of what we're building as a overall community.
And that conversation is really what's been driving us toward treating these, all of these conservation properties, that we have to treat them more like a national park system, more opportunity for taxpayers to access those properties for sort of low-impact activities. It preserves the natural setting, but at the same time, it provides an awful lot of activity for our residents.
My son's riding a 200-mile race this coming weekend on a single-gear bike. He's got some crazy friends out there.
I apologize, I had to step out for a second. Just a couple of questions, and really more for my slotting of various dollars and cents. About half of the money that we're spending is on the Larry Kiker Preserve, and it makes reference to Conservation 2020. How much is coming from there, and how much is coming from impact fees?
Commissioner, we don't have that exact breakdown yet. We do have a recommendation that we're going to bring to you later on about use of some money that was from tourist development tax. We'd like to use tourist development taxes this coming year and make a request for tourist development taxes. Now, out of the whole 5 years, how much tourist development taxes and how much general fund, we don't quite have that split out yet.
Commissioner, and to be a little more specific in the answer, we have, in our conversations internally about how we'd like to recommend funding, we have not had any conversations about expanding park activities with the use of the 2020 funds. That is exclusively for acquisition and maintenance.
And the reason why I bring it up, honestly, is when you start to look at the coding, you know, that I've asked you for, and the coding that we have is, whether it's CIF or I or conservation, it just says conservation. So in the long sheet that you provide from me, I mean, in my mind, I certainly tried to go through and understand the revenues that are coming into the county, the way we're expending it, what's left over. So I'm just trying to divide and slot in the various funds. To me, I appreciate every project that's on here. Moreover, I'm just trying to understand the dollars that we have available to us, the dollars that we're spending, the dollars that we potentially have left over, to really bring in this global conversation that we're having, whether we need to use reserves or anything else. The reason I appreciate the documentation you gave the board and I requested, was to try to slot in that, to try to keep tabs. It's like anything else. You have enterprise funds and you're using balances, and your ending fund balance may be impacted by that. So just trying to slot that in. So the only reason for the question was really the categorization of it. And it alone had conservation, didn't have anything else. So that's a conclusion I came up with, not for any other reason.
Yes, sir.
Yep. We'll change that, Commissioner.
Yeah, you know,
It should
and
be identified differently.
you know, and I think it's important to, you know, make sure the public understands too the things that we're all doing, and I didn't want it to be a document that's maybe somewhat confusing. So that was really my point. But no, I mean, I like all the projects. I think Commissioner Pendergrass brought up an interesting point. And part of it is dollars and cents. I realize that, but part of it is just how many things you can manage at one time, is it not? Different projects, I mean, you only have capacity to manage so many projects at one given year.
That's correct, but we can manage this, the workload that's before you today.
Okay. So the prevention is really just in what Commissioner Pendergrass brought up, was really just managing or dollars?
It's funding.
Funding, okay.
Yes.
So then it really comes down to priorities. Okay.
And that's again, what I talk about, the second part of the budget we'll talk about in a few weeks is the excess reserves we have in, you know, and our current rate and all that. But, you know, that would create jobs. That would also enhance the community, expedite some of these projects.
Commissioner, I too want to make sure we just utilize the resources we have to the best of our ability, and understanding when we've depleted a particular fund or other funds, it is helpful. And then what's left over, so we make decisions and we say, okay, the priority is this, the priority is that. It's a lot easier to do so. So this is really good information. It helps me. And I think part of the conversation, you'll look forward to Commissioner Pendergrass's in a couple of weeks to see what we do have available to us, and then we have to make some decisions. So that's really what you're doing, because when you look at this is $60 million, and when you look at maintenance, is another $76 million. I mean, so it's a lot for Parks and Rec. So
We can handle it.
Lee County should be fortunate that we're able to provide all the various amenities we are providing for them. Kudos.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse.
I'm now going to introduce Roland Ottolini with Natural Resources.
Good afternoon. It's a hard act to follow, but we got a few projects we want to present to you today. This list contains water quality, flood protection, combination of that, and water conservation, as well as one of our beach renourishment projects as well. So we'll start off with the Bob Janes Preserve Restoration. That's I would consider a water quality and water conservation type project. It's a large Conservation 2020 parcel in the northeast portion of the county, primarily looking at hydrological and ecological restoration of former ag fields in concert with the natural flowways that are on the property. We'll be installing berms and water control structures to attenuate water, clean the water, recharge the groundwater, Then it's clean, send it on to the Caloosahatchee. We do get TMDL credit for the title Caloosahatchee Basin Management Action Plan. Total project cost is about $1.3 million. We've already completed a feasibility study. We're going to proceed with the design element. We need $300,000 following this fiscal year to add to that design contract. Hopefully this work will be completed in fiscal year 22-23. This is typically funded through general fund capital improvement program, but there are potential for grant, especially through Florida DEP's TMDL grant program. Moving on, this is a significant project. We were awarded a contract, or a grant for Cdbg grant for East Murloc Water Control District for drainage improvements in the San Carlos Park area. This map depicts the portion that was eligible. As you recall, that area was hit very hard in Invest 92L as well as Hurricane Irma. There's some significant drainage issues that still need to be addressed. If you recall, initially phase 2 work in that area, we just removed trees that were down in the right-of-way. This goes back in several canals and reestablishes those drainage right-of-ways, probably over 10 miles worth of work. We just, this money is $7.1 million. We're going to spend about $4 to $5 million of that this year, and the balance will be for next fiscal year about $1.8 million. We upfront the funding and then we get reimbursed through the grant. Hopefully have that all completed by May 2022. Again, it was a Cdbg grant. In fact, the bids are pretty promising. We just got in, so we'll probably get back with DOT and see if there's other improvements in that area that we could spend that grant funds with, you know, some culvert replacements, what have you. And earlier, Kiker Preserve, you heard Jesse's presentation on the recreational components. This would also be considered a potential for flood mitigation, also water conservation, water quality. This property is uniquely located in the southeast portion of Lee County that could potentially temporarily hold water. We'd basically install a kind of a low-level berm and water control structures so that when you have a major significant event, you could attenuate that water, release it downstream to Halfway Creek, Spring Creek, and Estero River at a controlled pace so that they are not flooded. And this would also serve to store some water that would not be impacting the Bonita Springs at the same time. The idea here is not to affect the operations, recreational benefits of the property. You know, we're looking at extreme wet season events, and so if it's maybe it's knee-deep water now, it may be thigh-deep during this, you know, 10-inch of rainfall. So it's going to be kind of a low impact, but a potential for storing excess water. Total project is $9.3 million. This is looking at as basically the design element of $700,000 next year. Hopefully have all of our portions completed in fiscal year 25-26. The funding source for this is general fund capital, as well as there would be potential for grant funds as well in terms of maybe hazard mitigation grants. And if there's a water quality benefit, we would also apply for DEP's TMDL credit. Moving on to flood mitigation projects. This is 10 Mile Canal South. This impacts the Island Park area. Ultimately, we need to come back to you for approval of our tier process. We have yet to come back with the flood mitigation projects for your consideration and ranking. This is an early out project because we did apply for grant funds for this. I believe it has hazard mitigation grant funds. This is basically restoring the capacity of 10 Mile Canal south of US 41, repairing a berm that's been breached over the years, and also selective excavation of the canal itself. Would increase the capacity. I believe it drops the water levels around 2 feet in that area. So it's a total project cost of $37 million. Next year we're looking at design costs around $1 million. Hopefully with, this could be, as you can see, it's multiple year funding. It lends itself to multiple phases. You start downstream, work your way up with these improvements. Hopefully we'll have everything completed by fiscal year 29 and 30. Again, general fund capital, but there is potential for the grants, especially with the hazard mitigation grant. And lastly, one of our beach renourishment projects. This is the Captiva Island Beach Renourishment Project. We participated in past years. It's funded under major maintenance, primarily tourist development taxes. It's for a basic restoration of the beach in a critically eroded area. Bids are just recently received around $19.6 million. If you use the formulary that the county has paid for this project in the past, it would be around $4.9 million of using the TDT funds. Typically, there's a formula there in terms of the project benefits, and those who benefit the project pay their proportionate share. It's usually broken down in either storm protection or recreational benefits. Storm protection is primarily paid for through property owners who receive a storm protection benefit for their homes, as well as a portion of the Lee County road that runs along in front of Tween Waters. Lion's share of the TD funds would be actually for recreational benefits, and that's cost shared with DEP. Again, that depends on parking spaces, and they basically calculate how many spaces per linear feet of beach renourishment. So again, this would be around a $4.9 million expenditure of the Beach Renourishment Trust Fund. That's it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, have any questions of the projects presented by Roland?
I'd like to ask, if I could, about 10 Mile Canal, Roland. If memory serves me correct, that was some pretty serious recent flooding issues when hurricanes were in that area. Yes. What caught my attention, though, was over a decade or so, that's a $37.5 million proposal that you're showing us here. That's just a horse choker at $37 million, even spent over a decade. Is that simply just for digging and widening and clearing out 10 Mile Canal? Give me a better understanding of what we're going to spend $37 million in a single project on.
Yes, there'll be, well, combination of several things. It'd be dredging some silt material, but also basically rock excavation, which is very expensive because it's a lot of the 10 Mile Canal was never completed to design standards because they hit, when they built that many years ago, it hit lime rock, and so they left it in place. So to increase the capacity, we have to go deep as well as wide. In some locations, we are also looking at some potential land acquisition. There's also some docks that have to be replaced. There's a berm along the western bank that has to be replaced. There's also boat ramps that have breached that berm over the years through the developments that have occurred along the western bank. And so we're going to have to make whole somehow their water access, either gently kind of a different type of slope ramp to get over top of a replaced berm. So there's several pieces. It can be, like I said, it can be broken down into elements based on you start downstream, work your way up.
I just, over this decade coming, just feel free to share more information as that project matures. It's still a frightening big number.
Commissioners, I'm just going to add to this conversation as we go through a description of all these projects for you. If any of you would like to have conversations in your office and more detailed briefings on these projects, we're also happy to do that. This is a lot of information to cover in one afternoon. It really is. It's all things we've talked about in the past and that you've instructed us on in the past. But when you put it all together and you start looking at the total number of dollars, it can feel pretty overwhelming. So if there are any of these that you would like more information on in individual briefings, we are more than happy to do that.
I think that's appropriate. Any rationale, and I appreciate that, any rationale in the way the dollars are allocated, because it seems like the year 25, 26 just jumps significantly. I don't know what the difference, I don't have an appreciation for why it would go from spending $1 million to $2 to $9 million in a particular year.
For 10 Mile?
Is that just funding?
Yeah, funding, commissioners, and this project will likely be highly dependent on grants. Not sure we could pay for the whole thing out of, well, I don't think we could pay for the whole thing out of excess reserves. So I think it's back-ended a little bit, waiting to see what kind of grants we can get for this project. And there potentially could be some significant grants out there for a project such as this.
So as you're doing long-range planning, the board will obviously have something in the future, but does this change based on, I gather it's got to significantly change based on our success in potentially receiving grants and not, I mean, obviously if grants are limited, this becomes a very expensive, and I don't have an appreciation for your pro formas and your projections, what is reserve-based, what is grant-based? You putting it off to 25, a big portion of this, but a big portion is hopefully for grants.
That's our thought process, Commissioner, and, you know, with a project this size and over this term, this is the first year we've put it on the CIP, so it may have a little less definition than as we go along and maybe get some grants for this, have a little better idea what future year excess reserves will look like, then we have a better definition of the complete phasing of a project such as this.
And maybe for my own edification, when we commit in a CIP and we look out 5 years, is there flexibility in adjusting that in the 5-year term?
Yes, you'll see, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more, as we get closer to a year, you'll see a lot more definition.
That's right.
Yeah, because a lot of these, we don't even have design yet, so it's,
Gotcha.
we're putting a number to it that is likely to change.
I'm comfortable then. Any other questions? Seems like we're good. Thanks, Roland.
Thank you, Roland.
There's Doug White ever solid waste?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Doug Whitehead with Solid Waste. Today, our top 5 projects over the next 5 years. Just as a reminder, these projects are driven by the growth in the county that we discussed during the long-term plan discussion back in December. Just as an overall map, 5 projects are the South County Materials Recovery Facility. There's not a specific location designated for that yet. And then the Class 3, Class 1 landfill construction, which is at our Hendry County complex. And composting is also at our Hendry County complex. The LaBelle and Clewiston transfer stations are in Hendry County. Some people may need to remember that as part of the 1993 agreement with Hendry County to site the landfill, we built Hendry County transfer stations in Clewiston and LaBelle. Our first project is our South County Materials Recovery Facility. This is driven mainly by that our present facility is at 90% capacity. That includes 2 shifts a day, about 20 hours of work a day, 5 days a week. It includes curbside recyclables for our large building, the building you see in the photograph there. We also intend to include yard waste and construction recycling at the facility. One note is that it will bring facilities closer to our South County residents and our future South County residents. There's a great deal of growth down there. Total project estimated cost is $32 million. Design is in fiscal year 21-22, that's ongoing right there, and also into fiscal year 22-23. Construction will be in years 23 through 26. The funding source is the enterprise fund. Types of funds could be commercial loan, not likely it would be a bond, but we are also speaking to people and we will seek a private-public partnership to develop the facility.
Could you go back
Landfill Class 1 update? Sir.
for a second? I was just reading, sorry. So, what's basically the cost in years 23, 24, and 25? I mean, I read some curbside recyclables adds 30 tons. Could you just elaborate a little bit more?
Certainly. Machinery cost for the curbside recycle is about $12 million. A building is about $8 to $9 million. Of course, these are under design right now, and then C&D recycling pad and yard waste pad would fill in the rest.
Thank you.
The landfill Class 1 update, earlier this fiscal year, the board approved the design and construction for Class 1 update. You see cells 11A through cell 12, constructs 15 years of airspace, takes our capacity through 2032. Total landfill capacity, as a reminder, goes through about 2047, 2048 right now. Project completion is in 2024. Estimated project cost you see there is about $15 million, design and construct. This is enterprise funds, probably pay-go, as every year you can expect in the future there will be some expense that will be designed to increase landfill airspace. Composting expansion is also at our Hendry County facility. Again, we're about 90% capacity. This again processes wastewater treatment biosolids, mixes it with mulch, and creates a high-quality compost that we sell in the open market. We intend to build, rather than one of the smaller buildings you see there, one large building, which is equivalent of about 3 of the smaller buildings. There's no change in operational methods. We'll also have a 3.4-acre pad where we'll cure the material prior to sale. Project completion is about 2024, and it's $4.4 million over the next several years.
Okay.
Landfill Class 3 update. A Class 3 landfill is construction and demolition material in essence. This is already been permitted under 1993 landfill plan and design. This gives us approximately 6 acres of disposal area and will be completed in 2026. Should give us airspace into the early 2030s. This again would be enterprise funds, CIP pay-go, just because we can expect work to go on over several years.
Let me interrupt and just show my ignorance once more. Tell me again what CIP pay-go means.
So
I know what an enterprise fund is.
we can pay that. Enterprise fund, obviously we're an enterprise fund. We bring our own revenue in and we have our own cost budget. But pay-go means that we can pay this out of our incoming revenue every year, more or less, or reserves.
So well, that sounds like enterprise fund. We're using internal funds from solid waste.
Yes, sir. But as a matter of writing a check, say we can pay this out of our incoming revenue every year to pay for this project, rather than this project we would not have to dip into reserves to pay for it, nor would we have to seek a bond or commercial loan.
Okay, I guess that's really the bottom line of what I'm asking for. The dollars are within existing budgets and anticipated budgets.
Yes, sir.
Anticipated reserve, and anticipated revenues.
Yes, sir.
The revenues coming in, we'll
Yes.
pay it.
I have a question.
Sure.
Doug, you're saying this wouldn't be ready until 2026
Yes, sir.
for the roofing stuff. Is there a need for that now, though? I mean, I know we talked before, the last few weeks ago, and we talked about it early in the year, about where we are now as far as the current system being stressed and being overloaded. Is there more need for that now? That's still 5 years out.
2026 is good. We expect present capacity to last about 2028. As our internal rule of thumb, we try to complete a new cell about 1.5 to 2 years prior to the present airspace being filled up.
I mean, I know you said you were making the changes with the current location now to expedite for customer service people. I think it was I got a call last week from some employees where I think the burners were down last week, 1 or 2 days.
Yes, sir.
They were lined up to 82 and traffic backed up. So is this why, if we're already at stress now, and I remember a couple of years ago, Commissioner Hammond, I think you voted against it. We had a study before Doug was here, Commissioner Sindelli or Commissioner Rain, you weren't here. We had it about 3 or 4 years ago. Staff brought forward a study. It was like $880,000 to tell us where we're going to be at 8-10 years from now. And it was an eye-opener because we had a lot of things, information that we finally got it back. I think it was 700,000. We finally approved the study for that. Commissioner Ham probably remembers that. And it was, you know, a lot of these areas we're stressed out now as far as capacity. That we see the long-term for adding burners to the facility. It's 8 years to get permits and everything. That's my concern. As fast as we are growing now, as many people moving here every day, and we all know how much trash people collect and actually create, and it has to go somewhere. So my concern is, some of these projects, do we need to expedite them sooner than later, because we're already at capacity now?
I think the South MRF facility is the number one thing that would reduce strain on the North facility. We are doing some quick operational changes, like you described, trying to move shingles out to the landfill directly, and that will have a big help. That's sort of the slowest customer, if you will, that we have. But I think the South MRF plant is the number one thing that could reduce traffic on the roads and also reduce waiting and increase capacity.
And what's the timeline on the south one?
2026.
It says still 5 years out. I mean, I understand we can do so much because of permitting, but with the capacity issue now, I was just concerned about that.
So, Doug, I'm a little confused. Do we have sufficient capacity to accommodate through 25, 26?
Yes, sir, we do, operationally. I believe what Commissioner Pendergrass is referring to is that we do have a lot of traffic and a lot of waiting at the Buckingham facility, as we have about 1,000 inbound customers a day right now. We're doing some quick operational changes to alleviate that problem, but the thing that will alleviate it the most will be an opening of an additional facility.
I think a lot of times, I've talked to some of the deputies out in Lehigh about it. They're finding people now dumping illegally. It's not because they don't want to pay the fee. They don't want to wait for 2-3 hours in line. So instead of paying the fee to dump their stuff, they just go find a vacant road in Lehigh to dump the stuff. So we don't want that to continue to happen either.
Right, and we can provide you information on waiting times and things like that too.
So what can we do to decrease the waiting time?
Moving some customers direct to the landfill, as we discussed, will have a large improvement in that.
I know we talked a few weeks ago about, maybe a month ago, we talked about, in turn I was asking about if we could create another lane out there and create more expansion out there at the current facility, but I know it'd be really costly to do that. We're kind of stressed the way it is now as far as that location goes, as far as room, correct?
We can do that. We have several things, and we can brief you on that. There's no problem with that.
Okay.
And a lane and also internal scales are part of that program.
Thank you.
Our last project is the Hendry County transfer stations. This will be the first refurbishment of these transfer stations that were constructed in 1994. They handle nearly all the material for Hendry County, recycling, wet waste, solid waste, yard trash, and household garbage, and they bring it to our other facilities, whether it's the landfill complex in Hendry County or the waste energy complex for recyclables. Estimated project cost is about $2.6 million. That'll move fairly quickly, be done in fiscal year 24.
What's the time associated with the Hendry County contract? When's it have a beginning and ending?
The Hendry County contract essentially does not end as long as we have airspace at the landfill.
Sorry, I missed you for a second.
It does not end as long as we have airspace at the landfill.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other additional questions for Doug? Let's move on to utilities. Pam?
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Pam Keys. This slide shows our 5-year CIP and major maintenance. We've got funding from our enterprise fund of about $300 million for the 5-year period. The type of project drivers that we try to address in our CIP and major maintenance are increased capacity and demand for population growth, changes in regulation, as well as just system improvements for customer improvements, safety, new technology, And then our budget is also driven by DOT, state and county projects. We have to be ready for them for their services. I'll go through these 5 areas. These are our major projects. Each of them are in some stage of design or permitting, and most of them will start seeing construction in the year 2022. First, we've got the North Lee County Treatment Plant expansion, which has a partner project with the Wellfield expansion. Our existing plant has 10 million gallons per day capacity, and we'll be increasing that by 5 million gallons. We currently have 17 water source well sites, and we're going to be adding up to 12 more. The 6 that you see west of the plant, we have secured, and we believe that we'll start seeing some construction on the transmission lines and on those wells as soon as October of 2021. We're still working on securing the 6 that are east of the plant, and we believe that we'll be able to get them secured, but we continue to work with county lands. We want to have all of the projects done by 2024, and it will address population growth not only in North Lee County, but in the Olga water treatment area. Our next capacity project is the Three Oaks wastewater treatment plant expansion, as well as the Ben Hill Griffith force main improvement. So this capacity project is to address growth within the Three Oaks service area, as well as the Alico corridor area, that area in the southeast area of the county along Corkscrew and Alico. This is an interim project. Long-term, we have plans for a new wastewater treatment plant along Alico, but this project should be done within fiscal year 25, and it is funded through sewer connection fees as well as fee revenue. Our next project addresses redundancy and providing backup between the north water treatment area and the south water treatment area. This line, that's a typo, it's going to be about 14 miles or more in length. The transmission line will allow us to be able to transfer potable water either from the north to the south or south to north, depending on where the demand is at. We want to have this project done by fiscal year 27, and it's also paid for through the enterprise fund.
Excuse me, before you leave that,
Yes.
orient me, I don't know, where are those blue lines going? Where's the river, where's 75, orient me?
Okay, so the river is,
Okay, I think I can find it.
let me
No,
see if I
can't.
can. Nope. So river, up through here. This is SR 80. And then it ends
That
at
looks
our
like
Airport Hall Road. So it goes between SR 80 and Airport Hall Road, east of 75.
So what's the big blue? What am I looking at?
It just shows the area that it'll be connecting to our Olga service area. And that's the potential alignment of that transmission line.
The top of that, the little round tie-in circle, is the Olga plant?
It's not necessarily the plant. It'll be connecting to another transmission line.
Because you're not talking too fast, but you're talking too fast for me. You're going to be digging a lot of ditches and putting pipes underground.
Correct.
Miles of it.
Correct.
For what you're showing me between now and 27?
Yeah, what we'd like to do is we have one designer doing the entire run, but we do want to use more than one contractor to build the transmission line so that we'll get it done quicker.
let me ask you to sort of back up while I've interrupted you here and go back to the North County Water Treatment Plant. Maybe back up to where you got those red boxes in North Fort Myers. Yeah, that. The 6 on the right there, that's North River Road that I drive every day home. And I've called your shop and y'all been trying to make me understand when you say an expansion of a well field, the well field is 4 or 5 miles west. So the concept of expansion is not just we're going to double the 30 acres we're drawing water from now. We're going way out. Is that, am I saying that right? That's just the 6 boxes there on the right. That road right there is 4 miles long. And we're going to be drilling new wells. Is that my understanding? Every place there's a red box, and there'll be, that water will be piped through what? A 6-inch pipe, a 1-foot pipe? How big a transmission line does that require to get it all the way back to where it's being treated at the North Lee County Water Treatment Plant?
Yes, that's correct. So I don't know the size of the piping, it's still in design, but the intent is that we will drill new wells and then connect them to a transmission line that will bring it back to the plant, directly to the plant, so it can be treated. We'd
be drilling the wells right along North River Road, right beside it on county right-of-way.
Correct.
And Randy's okay with your doing that?
Yes, so far so good. We do coordinate with DOT so that they understand where we are, where we're
10
putting.
years from now, when he needs to 4-lane that and needs that right away, you'll be able to go right over top of it?
We have the same situation on numerous roads already. There's some
Where they've got wells on county right away?
second portion, there's a couple wells out there we'll have to deal with.
Okay, I'm just getting an understanding of a concept of a well field expansion that is in miles instead of a few thousand feet perhaps, which obviously that has to do with the cost of just that underground pipeline for a long, long way. So we're shipping raw water untreated back to the plant so it can be treated and then distributed to wherever it goes.
Correct, correct. In the North Lee County area, we've been having difficulty finding property to place our wells. I think there's a lot of speculation, and like I said, we've secured 6 of them, but with the proposed new development, we need to go further east to get the water.
Are those the ones who've gone, that's the further east, is that part of that on Bob Jane's property?
We are working with parks. We'd like to place 1 well within the preserve, and we'd like to do it so that it's non-intrusive. We'll put it in an area that's already been disturbed. And yes, we're getting to the point where we've got limited options.
It's either going to be on Randy's North River Road, or it's going to be in Bob Jane's property already owned by Lee County. And when y'all get done with it, you won't hardly even see it, will you?
No, you won't. No, you won't.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
You've just surveyed that within the last couple of months, and you've got 2 stakes side by side on the side of the highway. Why do it take 2 stakes and then 400 yards more, 2 more stakes? What are those survey indicators?
I would guess that it may be the storm drain system, but I don't know.
Find out and come see me.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you, thank you.
Real quick, if I could ask a follow-up too before we leave this one. Will this help us with, I know we still got I think the Olga plant that gets the water out of the river. Are we going to eliminate that at some point, or do we plan on continuing to use that going forward?
I think that the Olga plant, we plan for the next 10 years at a minimum to continue to use. while we get this plant up and rolling and get all the wells. We do need to come up with a long-term plan for that plant. It's the only plant that we have a surface intake, and it's becoming aged. So it's one of those that it's not in our 10-year plan, but we do need to start looking at it for replacement.
Do we have, and we do, I know we do because we've used them before. What are, remind me again, our contingencies for when the river water is not a good source to use for raw water?
Right, so right now, we've shut down the Olga treatment plant operations. We shut it down to do the chlorine flush, and by the time the flush was done, we started to see signs of algae in the river water. So we've kept it shut down. We'll do maintenance. It's fed from the North Lee County water treatment plant. That's why the transmission line just gives us more options so that if there's an issue with the North Lee County plant, then we can feed north, or if we have a problem at our Corkscrew plant or one of our plants in the south, we can then feed south. So we're trying to make as many redundancies as possible so that we're able to address emergencies.
Thank you.
And Pam, what's the length of time for construction of a water treatment plant from concept to completion?
So we want to start construction probably in sometime during the calendar year of 2022 and have it completed by 2024.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You build them concurrently?
I'm sorry.
You build them concurrently?
The wells and the plant concurrently, yes, and the transmission lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
As Commissioner, part of this, when we talk about the utility system and some of the other infrastructure, this really is about having infrastructure in place to accommodate growth as it comes, to the best of our ability. And so that's a lot of what you're looking at here today.
Absolutely.
Well, frankly, I was wondering, this has got to be measured in some way based on anticipated demand with the current growth patterns of the county.
Yes, sir, it is a combination of current growth patterns as well as future land use maps. We've got a pretty fair idea how the county's going to build out over the next 15, 20 years. And so it's an attempt to use our best technology and experience to predict that growth and to also plan these capital projects to accommodate it when the time comes.
Can anybody give me a close to within 100 million gallons guesstimate of how much water we're taking out of the ground today, and then what will the expansion add to that? I'll take it in total gallons or percentages. It'll increase our capacity by 30%, 10%, 50%,
So currently.
and which will take us into the year 2040 in terms of anticipated growth and demand?
Correct.
I interrupted you, so go.
No, I'm sorry. Currently, our well field produces about 9 million gallons per day. With the new wells, we anticipate that we'll be able to increase that to 18, so another 9 million gallons per day, and that will take us through that planning period of 2040.
I've recently talked to somebody who deals with well drillers, and they're getting a lot of calls because wells, particularly this very month, are going dry. Are we having to go deeper to get our water, or are we at risk of running out of water?
That's a great question. We are always concerned with not only the production of a well, but also the water quality of the well. Our well sites in the South County are pretty predictable. They're all deeper wells. In North Lee County, we need to be concerned with water production. Some of our wells haven't been as productive as we anticipated. And that's why we want that double capacity, basically, to have more redundancy.
Okay.
I think a lot of the concern is for home residential wells, which are basically surface water wells, more superficial.
Well, it was, you know, the 120, maybe 150-foot wells we're talking about. How deep are these? 500, 1,000?
Closer to 1,000.
Okay. Just talk to me from time to time. You're going to come see me anyway.
I will. It will be a pleasure.
I'm going to take advantage of your kind offer, Roger.
Yes, sir.
Our staff's got all this information. They're just dying to share with me.
Indeed they are.
What a team. Thank you.
Okay, so for the last group of projects I'd like to talk about today, it's for our Fiesta Village and our Fort Myers Beach wastewater service areas. These projects include the installation of 2 deep injection wells. Deep injection wells are used for disposal of reclaimed water, excess reclaimed water. And we are also building a reuse main between the 2 plants so that we can better distribute the treated water. This is in response to a regulatory change. We currently have a permitted discharge point into the river. With these 3 projects, we hope that we could use that discharge point only for emergency situations and be able to better use our reuse water and easier disposal of that excess wet weather water. So again, all of these 3 projects are in some form of design, and we hope to have the projects done by FY25.
One more question. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Is this the same water we're talking about that the city of Fort Myers and Cape Coral just, with our assistance, cut a deal on to ship treated wastewater across the river to the Cape from Fort Myers? Or is this a different kind of water, different place?
This is our reuse water. The counties, these are 2 county facilities. City of Fort Myers and Cape Coral has separate utility systems.
Thank you. But instead of us having somebody to give it to, we're going to deep well inject it.
If need be, yes. So our first goal is to get it out to customers for irrigation purposes, but during certain times of the year, we just have way too much water than what's needed. During the rainy season, we don't have the demand, and so we have to have an easy disposal site.
Thank you.
Could I ask a follow-up? Just curious on that. I can see in the Cape right now, the canals are so dry. They're really run down, and they use the canals for water supply for that reclaimed water purpose. Is that correct? Am I remembering this right?
I believe so. I'm not real familiar with their system, but they do use their canals for irrigation and I believe fire protection.
So when is their interconnect with Fort Myers going to be complete? Do we know?
I would only be guessing. I don't have this status.
I'm just wondering if we've got too much and they need it, I wonder if we look at an interconnect potentially there too. I mean, I don't know what I'm asking. I know it's dangerous to ask, but I wonder, it does seem interesting. We've got 2 facilities where we do at times of the year have more than we need. And if the Cape, right now, it was really interesting this weekend. I was at a park in Cape Coral. You could look across the lake, Lake Saratoga, and you could see the bottom, the pilings for the docks that were along the edge of the lake. You could see all the way to the bottom. It was completely dried all the way down to that. So I know they need some water right now. I didn't know if that would help with their situation or.
They've not approached us. They're pretty focused on the city of Fort Myers. I think most utilities, wastewater service areas, you either have too much water or not enough water. So it's a real balance. Our relationships with our current customers often include storage for storing that excess water, but most have a disposal. Most utilities have some type of disposal where they just have too much water.
But that's an interesting point of view. It's going to be some time before Cape receives and that project's built to go to from Fort Myers. So, sorry. That's an interesting concept. It's going to take a while for Fort Myers to finish that pipeline to Cape Coral. It's going to take quite some time. So it's just interesting as you bring that up. I mean, talk about out of the box thinking there's a need for water. And my understanding, having been involved in that for quite some time, it's only for a period of time because based on Fort Myers' growth, they believe that they'll need that water sometime in the future.
Yeah.
So it's not for perpetuity. I know means, but interesting concept. I think we should keep our minds open.
I think it's a great question. For no other reason than I know it costs millions of dollars to build a deep well injection project. 6 to 10 million. I mean, it's a lot of money to do that. I would think we could borrow Randy's roads and run a pipe and then cross the river. Cheaper than you could build one well maybe, but I think it's a legitimate question that needs to be explored a little more.
How deep are the 2 injection wells you're talking about?
Oh, boy. They are typically greater than 3,000 feet.
And how
Thank
much,
you, Mark. Mark, I said 2, and Mark held up 3, so 3,000 feet.
Yeah, I think.
what type of capacity do they hold?
I'm sorry?
What type of capacity do they hold at 3,000?
And these are not ASR wells, right?
No, they are not ASR. They're purely for disposal, and it's for the capacity of the plant. So you try to design them for 5 to 10 million gallons per day.
This is where we would put our excess water.
Right. Typically during wet weather.
It's treated excess water. It's,
Treated excess water.
so it's not gonna poison anything down there, but if there's other areas of this growing county that need the water, I think Commissioner Hammond's got a good point that we need to look at that.
It's something we need to be open-minded about, absolutely. I mean, it's treated water, it's good water. I'd rather see if there's another purpose other than putting
Take
it
care
in
of
the
it,
well.
Adelini. You're the natural man. Yeah.
Mr. Walker?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the questions you need to ask up front is could you put that water in a canal? It is treated water, right? And we know we could put it in a deep injection well, but could you put it in a canal? I don't know if there are different standards. It'd be a good question.
Mr. Chair? Pam, close your ears. Yeah, I don't want your head to explode. Commissioner, we've not had a lot of discussions internally, at least in the county manager's office, about water reuse. I can tell you, just as a person who's been renting a place to live, it's a house, for the last, I don't know, since December, sort of. And the way this property was constructed, is the yard irrigation system is hooked to the potable water supply. When that supply, when the water is on and that yard is being irrigated, I use 6,000 to 7,000 gallons of water a month. I turned it off for a whole month and I used 2,000 in the house itself. I shower every 3rd or 4th day.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's such a dramatic difference between the amount of water that's used, and there's nothing more expensive than irrigating, grass with drinking water.
Right.
It sort of defies common sense. The question is, how much does it cost to provide a secondary system? And then, once we do that, will we pass an ordinance requiring all new construction to use the reuse water, instead of giving options? So, we're happy to have that conversation and talk with you more about how that might work, what the cost might be, those kinds of things, if you like.
Yeah, I think it's certainly it's something that we should explore. I'm not necessarily certain what we need to go through. I mean, in my former life, denitrification was certainly something we had to go through to use reclaimed water, and it was a major upgrade to our plant to do that. But there was a need, and our alternatives were exactly what we're looking in front of, and we chose to make the investment to have long-term water supply that we can utilize, as opposed to putting it in the ground.
I know with the community I live in, Gateway, with the service district, they have the reclaimed water for the whole community under the CDD out there, and it works great. irrigation.
I think based on the discussion, it certainly would be something I think we should explore.
Okay.
Is it easy, what would be the next step? Would you talk to the city manager over there to try and open that discussion to see about?
About sending water to Cape Coral from
Yeah.
Canals? Oh, my.
And they may just say they're not interested, I don't know.
They may or may not be. I mean, the time of the year when we have excess water is the time of year when the canals are full.
That's right.
So, you know, we have customers otherwise for a lot of our reuse water, but during the rainy season, that's when we've got a problem. So I don't know about the practicality of you know, that particular approach. We'll talk about it and just to make sure that I haven't said anything that's incorrect. But Pam's shaking her head no.
No, I should clarify, we use about 80% of our treated water for irrigation. It's only a portion of our total production that is unneeded.
I'm thinking there might be capacity demand on this side of the river. Rather than having, you were gonna build the deep well injections on this side of the river, yes. And with all these developments that we're building all these expensive roads for in South County. And now that I know you can ship water 8 miles from where the well site is, you could certainly ship treated wastewater a long way. So yeah, I would encourage staff to at least let this be on a back burner that you're kicking around. Right, Commissioner, you further? Yes.
I certainly, if it's okay, I mean, I think it's something staff should continue to explore for us because there's a lot of pieces to this and I don't want to dismiss it either way. Denitrification, I have some experience in, and it also gives you the ability not only to go through the process of cleaning water, but also we did have capacity to store it as well. So use it when you need it. And again, I don't know what our capabilities are here.
So we'll kick it around and bring you back some information, perhaps as part of another workshop as we get into the new year. Pam, that work?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Mindy Simon with our library.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam. See you soon.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to review the library's upcoming CIP projects and technology major maintenance projects with you today. The library has 4 CIP projects currently underway or scheduled for the next several years, as well as some major technology equipment upgrades. Our projects will be in several locations throughout the county. The library has a comprehensive major maintenance program. We work with facilities, construction management, and our innovation and technology departments on a regular basis to ensure the interiors and exteriors of our buildings are accessible, up-to-date, and attractive, and that our equipment is current and meets county standards. The next fiscal year, we have several technology equipment upgrades included within our major maintenance program. The majority of the project cost for next fiscal year is the replacement of our patron self-checkout machines, security gates, and public computers at all library locations. The existing equipment will be replaced with newer, up-to-date technology. Also included in next fiscal year's major maintenance project are upgrades to our audio-visual systems, security cameras, service desk computers, and digital signage at various library locations. The major maintenance for technology is ongoing, and the funding source is the library fund. And as Pete mentioned earlier this afternoon, it's a $5 million project cost over the course of the next 5 years. Our first CIP project to review are library shade structures. And like parks, we need to add shade structures to our outdoor spaces. Next fiscal year, we plan to have shade structures designed and installed in the courtyards of the Bonita Springs, East County, and North Fort Myers libraries. The following year, we will add shade covering over the Story Garden at the Lakes Regional Library and in the third year, add shade coverings over the 3 reading gardens at the Northwest Regional Library in Cape Coral. We plan to include shade structures in any future building projects and renovations when possible. The 3-year project cost is a little over $1 million, and the estimated completion date is fiscal year 23-24, all funding through the library fund. Plans are currently underway for the renovation of the 4th floor of Admin East, this building, to relocate library administration. In an effort to reduce the number of leased spaces within the county, the Lee County Sheriff's Office will be moving into our current location. The library's management team, administrative staff, fiscal staff, digital services, programming, outreach, and other support staff will move to the new location. The move will improve efficiency and bring staff closer in proximity to interact with other county staff in the downtown campus. Design and construction will begin this fiscal year, with finishing construction next fiscal year, for a total project cost of $3.7 million. Estimated completion date is summer of 2022, and again, the funding source is the library fund. Plans are also underway for the renovation of the existing Riverdale Library. This neighborhood branch library was formerly in leased space. We purchased the building in 2019. The renovation includes maximizing the interior space with separate areas for children and teens and increasing the public meeting space. The mechanical systems will be upgraded, and exterior improvements include outdoor shaded public seating and parking lot improvements. There's a shopping center next to the library that's currently undergoing renovations. There's a Publix going in. Total cost of the project is a little over $3 million. Design is this fiscal year, and construction is next fiscal year, with a projected completion date of summer 2022, with the funding source, the library fund. And finally, the South County Regional Library renovation is our next CIP project, and that library opened in 1996. Plans include interior upgrades with additional meeting space for the public, a dedicated story time area for children, and the addition of an automated materials handling system for checking in returned materials. The mechanical systems will also be upgraded, and exterior improvements include updates to the front entrance and the parking lot. And the total project cost is a little over $6.4 million, design next fiscal year, and construction in 22-23, with an estimated completion date of summer 2023, and the funding source, the library. And if there are no questions, we're moving on to major maintenance, which will be presented by Mark Mora.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mindy? Thank you, Mindy. Good job.
Notice how quiet she was?
Oh, yeah. Oh, she's a librarian. She's very quiet. Mindy's such an unassuming person, as far as we can tell.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long afternoon. We'll wrap up the presentation with a quick walkthrough of the major maintenance, countywide major maintenance, that is. As Pete spoke earlier at the top of the presentation, major maintenance is comprised of the planned expenditures for maintenance and repairs that result in the extending of the life of a county facility or amenity. And for our 6,400,000 square feet of facility, our facilities folks do some major maintenance in the following items here you see listed on your screen now. Painting, flooring, plumbing, HVAC, and roofing tend to be the major or significant projects due to the aging of our facilities. These items are often scheduled on a rotational basis and up to 5 years out. Really appreciate the county manager pointing out the fact that we have a very aggressive preventive maintenance program, which we have successfully avoided the costly deferred maintenance costs that come along without take care of issues before they happen. The next slide is an overview of all of the projects that were recently completed, those that are underway or soon to start, as well as those that we're considering in the 5-year window. We broke those down categorically into 4 areas: renovations, replacements, improvements, and new construction. As you can see on the list of recently completed projects, staff has been pretty busy over the pandemic, never missed a beat, and was able to perform all of the maintenance items that were scheduled for the last couple of years. I'd like to walk through the underway or soon-to-start projects with you real quickly. I'll point out some of the more significant projects. Lee Trans Rosa Parks Transfer Center and the South Park and Ride Facility are 2 exciting projects, but we're really looking forward to seeing completion over the next couple of years. Additional amenities and access improvements to Brooks Park, JY Linear Park, and 6 Mile Cypress Slew Park. Renovations, as Mitty mentioned, to this particular building for the relocation of library administration. Lehigh Senior Center renovation, the Ortiz Jail roof replacement, and the downtown jail fire alarm, sewer line, and kitchen replacement. And we anticipate all of those projects on that list to be wrapped up prior to November 2022. Future projects at the very bottom of the screen are plumbing replacements in the downtown Justice Center, numerous HVAC replacements countywide, and Ortiz Jail window replacement. Pete also mentioned at the top of the presentation that you're seeing an increase in the proposed major maintenance budget for next year, basically because of the plumbing, HVAC, and there was one other, I'm sorry, plumbing, HVAC, flooring, and roofing costs that we're seeing in some of the jails, both downtown and at Ortiz. So with that, I'll wrap it up. If you have any questions for either myself or our facilities folks, he have his here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mark, as we have put preliminary cost to all of these projects, are the costs remaining stable? Are they going up? We know they're increasing the cost of products in the construction industry.
I appreciate that question, and yeah, our team is seeing between a 10 and 30% cost inflation on materials. Also labor, there's just a shortage of labor that's kind of impacting the cost there. So these projects that we have planned have some built-in escalators in them. We'll continue to monitor the market and the economy to see if those adjustments need to be made.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
All righty, Pete, I'll turn it back to you.
So Commissioners, that completes the presentation this afternoon. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, our questions now, and we've gotten some really good input that we've taken notes on from your questions to the directors. Are you good with proceeding to the second draft? And then is there anything else you would like to consider in addition to what we discussed during the presentation?
What's your timeline for proceeding to the second draft?
I would anticipate Commissioners bringing the second draft back to you in August. I think on the 15th, we're going to go over the operating budget, and that's a pretty big piece of business. So probably August when we bring back the second draft.
So then I would recommend any commissioners that wanted any more detailed briefings to do it between now and August.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It would just make the conversations a lot more productive. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If Commissioners, if you wouldn't mind, review my notes with you just a little bit, make sure that there's consensus on some of these items. For Parks and Rec Department, we want to see if it's possible to move the Ruttenberg Park renovation up in the schedule. It's currently scheduled for fiscal for 24-25, but if possible, to move it up. Jesse told us today that it's a matter of scheduling the funding appropriately. Then also for Parks and Recreation, there's a suggestion earlier to move GS10, the kayak launch in particular, see if we can expedite that project. And again, Jesse tells us it's a matter of having adequate funding. And so it's a kayak launch at GS10 and also shade enhancements, moving them up into the schedule as well, if that's possible. That's all I have for Parks and Recreation. There were some questions, Commissioners, on the solid waste program and how we go about improving the wait times for particularly for construction demolition debris to be left at the Buckingham landfill site. And Doug told us that he has some options we're working on, so we'll talk some more about those and present them to you at a later date. And then lastly, on utilities, you asked us to just begin some discussions about water reuse and see where those conversations go, and then we can bring that back to you at another time. Have I missed anything that you can think of? Dave? Commissioners, that's what we have.
I don't have any other questions.
The only other question is unrelated to today, but was today the day we were supposed to get the number from the property appraiser on,
Yes, sir.
you get any update for us yet, or?
Yes, sir. The countywide tax base increase is at 6.3%.
Okay.
Very close to what was projected. So we still have, that was a preliminary number. The property appraiser will give us the final number on July 1st.
Historically, what's the increase we generally see between preliminary and final?
It has historically been with the previous property appraiser on the order of 1% addition.
So that's our next workshop, actually, next week is bridge tolls, but then after that is that when we start to get into the budget itself.
Yes, sir.
You'll bring us like what the rollback looks like and all that good stuff.
All of those things.
And Commissioners, just to clarify, that 6.3% is post value adjustment board. So I think what the property appraiser sent out might be just slightly higher than that, but the 6.3% includes the adjustments that were made by the value adjustment board.
Okay.
All right, sir.
Yep. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call it adjournment.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good job.